Alright guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I want to talk on Archnemesis specifically, outside of all the crap going on with Path of Exile in general right now in 3.19 with the loot and drama, whatever. I don't want to talk about that in today's video. I want to specifically talk about Archnemesis and what it's done to the game. Personally, I feel that Archnemesis is a good theory in concept, just the implementation I feel is a little off. The reason being is because the Archnemesis mods really highlight the differences in player power versus monster power and how separated they have been ever since this league has been introduced. I don't know about you, but personally, the reason I'm enjoying my Righteous Fire Inquisitor is because I'm not dying all the time. I know, even though I'm on solo self-found softcore, dying in this game sucks. And I think it's because as a community and as a player base, we have been groomed into thinking we're the ultimate god-slaying machine, and we have this crazy power fantasy that Grinding Gear Games has really tried to push over the years. And when that gets taken away from us, it feels terrible. And even though I have 6 portals on, you know, my maps and stuff, I hate dying in this game. And I'll kind of touch on a little bit in Archnemesis why it takes away so much of my enjoyment in the game, even though I'm still technically having fun right now in the current 3.19 patch. If you guys like this video and things like it, remember to subscribe, hit the like and the bell button. I go live every day on twitch.tv/Drydeck_TV, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time is when we go live. Let's go ahead and jump into this video, okay? All right, Archnemesis. Again, I think the league can be good, and I think the league mechanic can be fine. I just think the implementation of it has been not really well thought through on Grinding Gears Games part, okay? So I think the ultimate concept behind Grinding Gears Games concept for Archnemesis is they want it to be kind of like the Dark Souls of PoE, okay? They want these just insanely challenging rares for whatever reason to be just these like absolute god tier units that you come across every once in a while. Problem is, it's everywhere, right? And I said this before in my other videos, is the fact that it's called Archnemesis, yet we see so many of them. It just like doesn't make any sense from a design concept for me. Archnemesis in its most basic form takes most builds' weaknesses and amplifies them to a point where it becomes frustrating and not fun to play. So if you play like any sort of attacking build, there's so many Archnemesis mods that they just populate so many damaging effects around the monster and around the player that follow you, that track you, that are really fast, are super hard to dodge, and it makes melee just a nightmare to play for the most part, okay? And then not only that, also for like elemental builds or chaos builds or spellcaster builds or really any kind of build, minion builds even, there's like specific Archnemesis mods that are fairly common that end up negatively affecting your gameplay to the point where you don't want to play anymore, and that's not fun, right? We all want to play more and more, but Archnemesis, I like more than anything makes me not want to play, because it just, you know, you guys seen videos on Reddit and on YouTube of these like Archnemesis monsters coming from off screen and just instantly teleporting on monsters. I haven't personally seen that yet, but there are some Archnemesis mods that I have no chance of killing, and I think it's just not fun, even though I'm in solo self-found softcore, to feel like I have no chance at killing this monster. And Grinding Gear Games has always wanted to do this opt into difficulty thing, right? And that was kind of the Ultimatum League was kind of the pinnacle of that. You opt into more waves, harder waves, to get more and more loot. And while that system does work to a point, you can only go so far with it. And I feel Archnemesis is like that times 10, right? But we don't get to opt into it. The difficulty goes up, 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 up. But right now, the rewards kind of don't match. And even if rewards don't really match one-to-one with difficulty, it's just the fight itself isn't fun. The mechanics of Archnemesis themselves are not fun to interact with. Unlike in things like Dark Souls and Sekiro and things like that, the monsters have choreographed, you know, very, very choreographed attacks. They follow a pattern, they have timings, they're designed around the character to be able to not take any damage eventually once you learn the mechanics of the fight. The problem with Archnemesis, I think they tried to emulate that with having these, you know, telegraphed attacks where like you see something building and building and building and then you explode and all this other stuff. Like there is attempts at it, but in an action RPG, most people are not looking at the bigger picture for the most part. They're really just focusing on too many different things, and the telegraphed attacks just aren't enough. And the reason I say they're not enough is because the more and more Archnemesis things that stack up and other mechanics like essences and ghosts and league mechanics like delirium, it becomes too much for one person to discern exactly what's killing them and in what fashion. It gets too much. There is just simply too much going on for any one realistic person to handle it and decipher what's happening on a second to second basis. If you look at things like the Shaper, fights like the Shaper, it's deadly, but it's very well choreographed and it's very well structured. I mean, people have always said that Shaper was kind of like the best fight that they made, and I wholly agree. You can take the most dumpster character to Shaper and eventually win, outside of maybe some entropy things where the little puddles get too high and you can't eventually win, but you have to have like a character that does literally 0 damage. But for the most part, you can get through Shaper with almost any build, and it's fantastic. It doesn't brick wall your character's progression based on your gear, and Archnemesis heavily does that. It doesn't matter how skilled you are at the game, doesn't matter how fast you are, how skilled you are, how much time you've invested in the game, your reflexes. Archnemesis outscales human capabilities very, very quickly. And that's the problem, is there needs to be a definitive end cap on difficulty. And having infinite scaling difficulty in games where your gear doesn't infinitely get stronger and you only have so many levels and things to put in, you eventually get to a point where, like in Diablo 3, your character is so weak compared to the monsters, you have to start doing degenerate things like perma immunity builds where you eventually just whittle everything down, and that's not fun either. That's never fun. It's not fun, you know, taking 20 minutes to kill one monster, but it's also not fun getting killed within half a second because the infinite scaling far exceeds what the players can, okay? And maybe if they had old Headhunter in the game with like the old inspired learnings where you could eventually kind of do what the monsters are to you, it would feel a little bit better. But right now it just feels like the gear to character power to monster power is probably the worst it's ever been in the entirety existence of PoE. So after playing a little bit more on the Righteous Fire solo self-found, I've kind of realized some things about me as a player, and maybe you can share this sentiment. It's not fun dying in this game, and the ultimate pursuit of loot to get to the point where you don't die and you kill everything really, really fast is kind of like the penultimate experience of Path of Exile, right? You want to get to the point where you literally kill everything. Nothing has a chance to kill you. That's kind of the ultimate power trip fantasy, right? And I think Archnemesis and the loot breaking in Lake of Kalandra has really highlighted a more fundamental issue with Path of Exile, is that the gear is far, far too powerful and makes way too much of an impact on your character. So you might think like, well, what do you mean? Why is it too powerful? Gear's not too powerful. It's broken right now. It's shit. Well, yes, the acquisition of the gear isn't as good, but the gear didn't change. They didn't remove any affixes from the pool of mods. You can still get all your gear, it's just harder, and it does suck. Time investment, grinding gear, not respecting our time, I get it, okay? Like, I understand, but I don't want to talk specifically about why I think gear is way, way, way too powerful and why it makes too much of an impact on your character. So like, as I pushed into like early yellow tier maps with the solo self-found Righteous Fire guy, I kind of noticed my gear was kind of falling off. My damage wasn't that good. My levels weren't quite high enough. My gem levels weren't quite high enough. It was kind of this weird spot in the game where like in the campaign going outside of Act 2, going up through Kitava, you feel great as a player. I think the player power to gear power to monster power is like perfect during the campaign, and it kind of extends all the way up into the end of white tier maps. It's just smooth. You can just get along with the game. You're not pressured to just gear and gear and gear. Once I got into like early yellow tiers, mid-tier, white yellow tiers, I kind of started feeling the squeeze a little bit. And that's kind of where I think gear needs to be balanced, is around those sticking points. So in the early game, it's fine. You just obliterate everything. You don't need anything. But the mid game, where I think a lot of people get stuck, is like tier 8 to like T14 maps. It's just this huge power spike in the monster's power level versus the player. Like you realistically can't make that many upgrades if you're still trying to progress. And I think that's where the problem comes into play, is gear is way too powerful on the top end, but they need to kind of make interim gear that's strong enough to get you to that point. And I think maybe that's where people are feeling the lack of loot in Lake of Kalandra, is that like that gap between feeling good, not feeling good, and then feeling good again is being increased. That time between those periods. And I would say, like, I wouldn't want like the top end gear to be nerfed. I would just want some of that power to be maybe available in a lesser form on lesser level gear, but that's easier to obtain outside of like crazy levels of farming and rolling the RNG dice, right? So I would like to see some of the top end gear get taken down to like mid-level gear, and I really think that stopgap between the gear level progression would feel a little bit better if we had something to kind of tide us over until we get to that point. Okay, the other thing is the reliance on RNG. Okay, so a lot of people have said, and rightfully so, that Harvest eliminated a lot of the gambling mechanics in Path of Exile. Okay, and I understand that a lot of people want agency in the game. They want more agency about their gear, the crafting, the planning process. It was really highlighted that the original formula of Path of Exile, where you just eventually outdo the odds with enough gambling, a lot of people don't like that kind of gameplay anymore, because I feel like that's what like mobile games do, and really cheesy gacha games and really like artificial lengthening tactics like AAA games do. And I will say grinding gear games is implementing some of them, but I wouldn't say like, I wouldn't want to go back to Ritual, because it was, like he said, it was too deterministic to find every piece of gear, and you were just literally just printing gear. I have people who tell me when they were playing, even though they had access to all this crazy gear, they quit playing even though they had access to literally anything they wanted because of that exact reason. There was no chase anymore. There was no like chase to get the gear. You just like, I have X amount of currency, go to this dude, I want these stats, he prints it for you, and then he hands it to you for a fee. Is that really that fun? I wouldn't really want to play a game like that either. But having somewhere in between where it is now and what it was then, I think it would be good. Like, I don't know what league that you guys felt was best, but having some stopgap in between where you can eliminate some of the RNG would be better. And I think improving loot drops, like I said in the last video, would help take a lot of that, alleviate a lot of that like crappy feeling when you're trying to gamble on everything. Because right now the whole game is gambling, right? Like you either ROG craft or do like annulling spamming or essence spamming. It's all gambling, and that's not very fun either. So there needs to be a certain middle ground between the really extreme like Ritual and actual Harvest League and what we have now. And I think people would be the most happy. So before heading out, I want to ask you guys another question, okay? And this is coming from someone who has zero experience really with like extreme harvest crafting or what it was like in Ritual, okay? I would say my favorite league was Legion, because they had like the incubators, and low map farming was profitable. Like you didn't have to juice, you didn't have to go into high tier maps, and you still felt like you were interacting with the game to a significant level to where you still felt like you could make player progression. It was nice. I really liked Legion for that reason, okay? So I want to ask you guys this. So even though people are harking on like, oh, player retention, okay, it's the worst it's ever been. And yes, objectively, you are right. It is the worst it's been since forever. This is the worst league so far. But even when you look back at charts of like the highlights and the best time in Path of Exile, like Ritual and Harvest, they still had a very similar drop-off point by this week 7, week 8, week 9, week 10 of the league. And that is when apparently the most build diversity and the most people had the most agency on everything they do, yet the player retention numbers follow a similar trend. I think there's an underlying problem with PoE, is that I don't think it was designed to incentivize people to play long enough to get through the 3-month league. Obviously, some people do. I'm not one of those people, I will admit. I probably won't play the entire league, but there are people out there that do, and there's some people that play for a week and then quit, okay? So the this like idyllic fantasy of Ritual was the best thing ever, and oh my god, we should all go back to that. And I know a lot of people love it, and I feel bad that you can't experience the game in the way that you want to, okay? It's not fun to not be able to play the game you want to play, but the way that I kind of look at things is like, what incentives does a company have to try to give you exactly what you want, when in reality, the numbers reflect that people don't stick around even when they say they have everything they ever want. It's just the reality of video gaming. You don't stick through everything. You come and go. You play some, you play more, you play less, whatever, right? It's really just the nature of the beast. And leagues specifically being compressed into a 3-month time period, I think really over amplify this this perception that loot and this time investment thing is killing the game, okay? So yes, in a week, some people aren't making their ultra endgame builds. They're not level 97, 98, 99 with perfect gear, or what they would consider perfect gear for their character within a week, maybe a week and a half, okay? But it's been less than 3 weeks since this league has come out, and it highlights a problem that the game isn't designed, I think, inherently to support a 3-month format, but yet they continue to do it. Would you personally play if it was a 1-month league? Or would you then quit a week in or 2 weeks in? Would you then play 4 months if it was a 6-month league? I just don't think people do, is because people have their fun with the league and then they quit. And it happens every single league. And if that unfortunately happened sooner than last league, it's just the reality of the game. You don't like the league, you don't like the state of the game for the snapshot that it's in currently, you come back later, and if you like it, you keep playing. But in reality, most people don't play the full 3 months. So really, as a company, why would they want to give us everything under the sun, let Reddit design the game and have it be perfect, when in reality, they have tried to make steps to give people exactly what they wanted, and yet they still didn't stick around for as long as they may have thought they would. So I don't know. I think there's just this weird outlook like, oh my god, the player retention's the worst it's ever been. Well, it's always bad. It always ends up tending down to about the same point. It just, this one went down further, and if it continues, that's gonna suck, obviously. But it's a learning experience for grinding gear games. I don't think they have malicious intent. Tarky Cat always says this a lot. I think a lot of people are conflating malice with incompetence, and incompetence might seem like a harsh word, but it's just the best way to describe it. They don't know everything. They can't see the future. They just make decisions and see what happens. Like, it's how every company in the entire world exists, yet somehow grinding gear games is like, I don't know, it's one of the worst that I've seen, unfortunately. I think maybe Reddit has really hyper inflated that. Anyway, guys, that is going to be the end of the video. If you liked it, comment, subscribe, like below. Remember to head over to twitch.tv/Drydeck_TV. Like, subscribe there if you haven't. I go live every day, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Let me know how dumb I am, how shit I am at the game, or if you agree with me, let me know as well. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!